I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit, for political purposes, my opponent's youth and inexperience.
I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody.
We have great fans. I want to thank them for being here. So it's a great night for Nebraska.
The Nebraska Democratic Party is not going to have a sort of, burning bush moment where everything gets turned around in one election. That doesn't happen.
The comments heard on Counterpoint Live are those of Mac McCoy and his guests and are not necessarily the opinions of producer Garth, Todd from Omaha Magazine, Dennis P. Crawford, the mail person, the guy on the street corner, old radio guy Marty, the church lady, Pastor Craig, or anyone else of sound mind and body. Now, here is today's Counterpoint Live, heard around the world on YouTube and Roku. Now, live from the Palacios Omaha Magazine studios, here's your host, Mac McCoy.
Welcome back to Counterpoint Live. This is a weekly program that talks about politics, both local and state and city. It also talks about social issues, and what I've done is I've asked Dennis P. Crawford, who is a Democrat and very knowledgeable about politics, and he's better at his side than I am at mine, and that's why I wanted him here, because I think it's important that we really do start hearing both sides. Now, you and I, Dennis, we're going to have to work on one thing, okay? Opinion is not fact. Would you agree with that?
I agree, but my presentation thus far has been very, very factual. And if you want me to, I can send you links to prove everything that I say, Mac.
I don't need that.
Okay.
I don't need that. I just sometimes feel that in politics, we say what we think and we say, well, that's the fact. I go back to what was that movie with, what's his name? That's the fact, Jack, in that military movie. But anyway, let's talk a little bit about some of the local races that are really heating up in this election year. Start with Mr. Bacon and Mr. Vargas.
All right, we have a very interesting race in congressional district number 2 in eastern Nebraska. It's Douglas County, part of Sarpy County, and Saunders County. This is a very competitive congressional district. Obama carried it in 2008, Biden carried it in 2020. And the congressional races in number 2 have traditionally been very close. The Republicans have won most of them, but it's usually very close. 2 years ago, Bacon beat Vargas 51 to 49%, and so this is a rematch of a race from 2 years ago. I think Vargas has a better chance to win this year than he did 2 years ago because the Republican Party in that district is heavily divided. Dan Fry ran a challenge against Tony Vargas in the primary from the right. He said that Bacon was too moderate, and Fry got 38% of the vote in a primary against a pretty well-known incumbent. So that's a real show of weakness for Bacon, I think. And Dan Fry and his supporters, they've said they want Bacon to lose because they want Fry to run again in 2026. They think he can beat Tony Vargas. Here's what Bacon's problem is he pretends to be a moderate, but he's really pretty right-wing. But the problem is Bacon convinced the right wing of the Republicans he's a moderate, but he's not a moderate. In 2017-18, when the Republicans had the trifecta, Bacon voted with Trump 98% of the time. He voted to raise taxes on Gold Star families. It was hitched to the 2017 Trump tax cut, in which the rich and the corporations got 80% of the benefits. And part of that bill included a tax increase on Gold Star families.
So was Gold Star families specifically listed?
It was just somebody just slipped it into the bill at the 11th hour in the middle of the night, and it passed. Subsequently, it was the tax increase in the Gold Star families was repealed in 2019. But
hey, that's what I thought.
Total incompetence on the part of the Republicans to let that go through. And another thing that Bacon did in 2017 is largely forgotten. Last night, Donald Trump said he had the concept of an idea for a replacement plan for Obamacare. It was a pretty laughable moment for Trump. But Trump had a plan in 2017. They called it Trump Care. And the Trump Care bill would have taken away insurance from 20 million people, would have gutted pre-existing condition protections. Don Bacon said hell yes to voting to take away insurance from 20 million people and gut pre-existing condition protections. This
So
bill,
Bacon voted against Trump?
he voted with Trump.
Oh, okay.
He voted with Trump to take away insurance from 20 million people and gut pre-existing condition protections. The bill, of course, included a big tax cut for the rich. Most Republican bills do.
Dennis, no, they. Oh,
I'll shoot you a link, Mac.
You can come up with whatever you want.
It's the truth. I'll
know,
shoot it to you.
In today's world, I just don't know what to believe anymore.
I know what to believe.
Well, then okay.
And let me tell you a bit more about this Trump Care bill. That was the bill that was killed by John McCain in the middle of the night with his famous thumbs down gesture. I mean, the bill was so unpopular and so toxic, Mitch McConnell teed it up for a vote at 3 a.m. so people would know what was going on and call in and raise Cain. And McCain walked in the Senate chamber, thumbs down, killed the Trump Care bill, and saved insurance for 20 million people. And Bacon voted for that terrible bill. And the interesting thing about Trump Care is the Republicans never talked about it again after it was killed because it was so bad. It was a great bill. They'd have ran on it in 2018.
Okay, so let's switch gears for a moment. By the way, this is Point Counterpoint Live. I'm Mac McCoy. My co-host is Dennis B. Crawford. And let's talk about why Vargas, what he's done. I don't want to hear about what he says he's going to do.
All right.
What has he done?
Fair enough. I totally agree. He's been a member of the legislature for 8 years now. He served in the Budget Committee, which is the most bipartisan, nonpartisan committee in the legislature. And the budgets that they report out are reported out of the committee usually on a unanimous vote. And then the budget usually passes with 40 out of 49 votes in the legislature. So Vargas has been a part of those efforts. Plus, Vargas has voted for several middle-class tax cuts while he's been in the legislature. So he's had a pretty good record of reaching out and working with the other side. You have to in the Nebraska legislature.
Has he done anything that you disagree with?
I can't think of anything at the moment. I can't say I'm familiar with the details of his record, but those are the main points. I follow the budget and taxes pretty closely.
All right. One other race that's going on that you wanted to discuss, and that is, you go ahead.
Okay. Deb Fischer, the incumbent senator, is running for a third term in the U.S. Senate. She promised to serve 2 terms, but she's broken her term limits pledge to try to run for a third term. So we need to impose that term limit on Deb on an involuntary basis.
Why did she say that she was going to break that and run for a third term?
I just think people get to Washington and they get seduced by power. I mean, both parties. I'm not going to, say it's just one party. She just got seduced by the power. And Dan Osborne is an interesting guy. He's running an interesting race. He's a union worker from the Kellogg's plant in Omaha.
No relation to Tom, right?
No.
Okay.
There's no E at the end of his name.
Okay.
And he led a successful strike against Kellogg's a couple years ago, won him some additional pay and benefits. He's running as an independent or a nonpartisan. He's center-left. He is for more rights for workers to organize to form up unions. He's for higher taxes on the rich. He's pro-choice, but he's pro-gun rights.
So this is the guy that made Kellogg's move out of Omaha.
Well, he didn't make a move out of it. It was just corporate greed. They're probably going to move the plant to Mexico.
Well, but it was based, the reason that Kellogg's is doing this, it's based on the union being so difficult to work with.
I think it's just corporate CEO greed. That's what it boils down to. They can still make a tidy profit and pay these good people of Omaha more money. But let me tell you about Osborne's strategy. It's really, really interesting.
All right.
He's running as an independent. I mean, Democrats, let's face it, have a bad reputation in a lot of the rural areas. Fairly or unfairly, they do, okay? So stipulated. And he's running as an independent.
Gee, I wonder why that is.
You want me to answer that question, Mac?
Well, I know what I would say.
Well, you hit us.
Well,
Do it.
Most farmers and people in the rural area have a relationship with their creator. They believe in what the Bible says. They believe in right and wrong and almost right. The Democrats, I don't see them that way. I just don't see him that way.
I just have to strongly disagree with you there. I know a lot of Democrats who are devout Christians. They go to churches where they believe that the followings are, they organize their beliefs and life around the followers of Christ. Like a good example of that would be First Plymouth Congregational Church in Lincoln. They individuals of this church donated money to help poor people in Lincoln pay off their medical debt. So a lot of Democrats attend churches of that denomination. But back to Osborne, he's running as an independent, and as a center-left guy. Like I said, he's progressive on economic issues. He's pro-choice, but he's pro-gun rights. He's anti-student loan debt forgiveness. But what's interesting is there's 2 recent polls, reputable, objective polls, and Fisher's only leading like 43% to 41%. I mean, that's a pretty poor showing for a long-time entrenched incumbent. So he has the ability to pull off the upset. I think people are tired of politics as usual, and they're willing to give this guy a chance. Obviously, 20% are undecided, so the race could still go either way.
All right, let's switch for a moment. The big legislative conversation this year was on property taxes. I mean, Governor Pellin even brought them back to try to solve that. What's the outcome of that?
Well, let's look at the big picture. The Republicans have controlled the governor's mansion and the legislature since 1999. They've owned the state lock, stock, and barrel, and property taxes have gotten out of control under their watch. All right? And so Pillin had this plan that was opposed by conservative Republicans. He wanted to increase sales taxes to pay for a property tax cut that would largely benefit the wealthy. And it
Why? Well, why does it always benefit the wealthy?
Because that's what Republicans believe.
Well,
They believe it's going to trickle down. That's been their philosophy since 1981. It doesn't trickle down, and I'm still waiting for it to trickle down. It's been over 40 years.
well, okay, but
Let's talk about the legislature,
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
So it was a bad plan. Even Republicans opposed it because a lot of Republicans did not want to support a sales tax increase. They thought it was a bad idea, and it was a bad idea. Nebraska would have had the highest sales tax rate in the region if Pillin's plan had passed, which would have made us very uncompetitive with other states.
But on a sales tax, I, the taxpayer, can control how much I pay by buying less. On property taxes, they are where they are. So lowering property taxes puts more money in the middle class. And if we buy less and there's less sales tax revenue, well, then we've just become more fiscally responsible.
Well, people who are middle class and poor pay a higher percentage of their income on necessities than the rich do, and studies show that sales taxes are a net tax increase on the middle class and the poor. And under Pillin's plan, the more land you own, the bigger the tax cut you got. So Jim Pillin would have got $1 million tax cut every year, and the middle class would have paid more to subsidize a tax cut for Jim Pillin. I mean, here's the dilemma.
You're talking about him personally.
Yeah, $1 million, according to the Journal Star. You can look it up. I'll shoot you the link.
Oh, according to a newspaper.
That's
okay,
right.
Good. I'm glad you cited the source.
I'll always do that
We
for
know
you.
what that is.
Okay. But let me tell you more about Pillin's dilemma. When he came in last year, he made his first priority cutting income tax. So he lost the revenue source to cut property taxes when he pushed through a big income tax cut last year. So the only way he could fund a property tax cut this year was with a sales tax increase. But there's other ways to fund a property tax cut that don't involve tax increases. We need to think outside the box.
Okay, give me an example.
We need more revenue sources. There's 2. Legalize marijuana, regulate it, and tax it, okay?
Yep.
Number 2, legalize and tax online gambling. There were bills to that effect to do it, but Pillin was opposed to them, so they didn't go anywhere.
Now, here's where I'm going to step away from my right Christian brothers and sisters. I would agree with you there.
Okay.
Why not? I mean, we're living in the old days, in the ancient days, when we think that people who smoke marijuana are dope heads and they're not productive and they sit around and eat Cheerios and Cheetos and watch cartoons. Also, the same thing with another tax increase, which you just mentioned. Those tax increases, I'm sorry, I'm not saying that right. Those forms of revenue taxes really don't have a bad thing add a bad thing to our state that we don't already have. When the government controls the alcohol, they ought to really shut up about, well, that's no good for you and that's not good for you, but we'll sell you beer and liquor, and now we're going to sell it at the football games.
I mean, the reality is people are going to smoke marijuana. They're going to gamble. If we don't legalize it in Nebraska, they'll go to other states where it's legal. I mean, gambling online gambling is legal in Iowa. They'll do it in Iowa. Marijuana is legal in Colorado, for example. So we might as well just submit to reality and legalize it and tax it here. Another revenue source we should seriously look at is Nebraska has one of the most generous corporate subsidy welfare programs in the country. We give out free money to lucrative corporations like the Union Pacific, the Burlington Northern, to create jobs. The legislature has had a series of studies and hearings, and they've failed to establish a connection between the subsidies and the creation of the jobs. The conclusion is the jobs would have been created even in the absence of the subsidies. And ConAgra, for example, collected like $150 million in subsidies, and they left Omaha a few years ago.
All right. I'm Mac McCoy. My co-host is Dennis P. Crawford, a retired attorney, trial attorney, sat on different leadership positions in the Democratic Party, and that's exactly who I wanted as my co-host for this show. I want both sides heard. I want to be educated. I have friends of mine that think I'm a fool to watch CNN. Well, how am I going to know what the enemy's thinking if I don't listen to him? So that's the basis of this show. We appreciate you testing it out. You can always give us an email, and you could send my email to info@pointcounterpointomaha.com. info@pointcounterpointomaha.com. Later on in the program, we're going to talk a little bit about abortion, and we're not going to bore you with a lot of the stuff that you think we're going to talk about. I think you're probably going to be surprised. But when we come back, let's go outside of our borders. The Israel-Hamas thing. What do we do about that? You know, in many ways, our 9/11, which is today, and October 7th is the same thing for the Israelites, and Israel, Jerusalem, and all those people over there. Let's talk about that a little bit and see if we can figure out at least ideas on how to solve these issues. I'm Mac McCoy. If I haven't told you lately, thanks for listening. Love this job. Couldn't do it without you. Right here on Point Counterpoint Omaha, or sometimes it's just Point Counterpoint.